Good evening and welcome. This is The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. As we continue our election series here on ZTM Prime, all appears set, and it is now up to political parties to secure the votes to ensure that their candidate will occupy the country's top job, and that job, of course, is the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. Parties and their respective candidates are on the ground soliciting for votes ahead of the August 23rd plebiscite. 11 candidates are running for the country's top job, and interestingly, and some may say disappointingly, all of them are men. Another point to note is that there is a lesser number of presidential candidates than in 2018, 23 then and 11 this year. Today I'm joined in the studio by presidential candidates and representatives of some of the political parties who are set for the top job. Election 2023, who will land top job? This is ZTM Prime broadcasting to you live from ZTN studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Good evening, I'm Andy Hodges. In the studio, I'm joined by Joseph Makamba Busha, Free Zim Congress presidential candidate, Engineer Wilbert Mubaiwa, MPC presidential candidate, Tafadzwa Mugwadi, ZANU-PF, and Jacob Mafume, Triple C. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to The Chase.
Good evening.
Now, to my guests, please note that here at ZTN Prime, our values are dignity, dialogue, and debate. All views expressed on The Chase are those of our guests and do not reflect the views of Zim Papers 1980 Limited or indeed those of ZTN Prime. Now, to our viewers watching ZTN Prime, we would like to hear from you. So please bring us your comments and views via our social media platforms, Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, and our Twitter handle at ZTM Prime. Now, as agreed with all of my guests before the program, they will each be given 1 minute to respond to my questions. If they do go over that limit, I will interject, cut them off, or in some cases, even switch off their microphones. I'd like to start with a topical subject, gentlemen. That's the forefront of most citizens' minds, and that is the economy. Economists have described our situation currently in Zimbabwe as a currency crisis and market failure. So the question is, how will you tackle this alleged critical issue, or are you not concerned at all? Tafadzwa, let me start with you.
Oh, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers, Mr. Hodges. I must say that I think if you reflect on our journey from 2018 up to where we are today, the economy has been the focus of the Second Republic in President Mnangagwa. And this current crisis, or this current, ongoing current challenges, they have just begun now. But if you check your record, otherwise from 2018, we didn't have them to the extent that we are having them now. And we know, of course, where that is coming from. We are just a few months before elections. This is not the first time to see this happening. We always see challenges such as these, and of course, for various reasons, but of course, the most specific reasons is that there's an attempt, of course, to assault our currency in terms of its value so that, voters can rebel against the ruling party, but that is not going to happen. In any case, in terms of tackling this challenge, I can assure you that through our Minister of Finance and the relevant stakeholders, we have put up in place gold coins to ensure that we restore value to our currency on top of productivity, to ensure that we deal with imports. We don't want to over-import. We have got to export through production.
Unfortunately, I have to jump in there. As you know, this question could take a whole program, and we will be looking at a further series on the economy. But I have to jump in there. Joseph, what is your views as what some critics and commentators call a crisis, both in the currency and also in the way that Zimbabwe's market is actually operating?
So there are two issues in Zimbabwe. There's the socio-political leadership crisis, and underpinning that certainly is the economic crisis. So we have had not just a decade, but 3 decades basically of instability. Now, how do you run a country, even have a reserve bank when you don't have your own currency? We've had multiple currency environment. Today, 2 currencies are predominantly trading, the US dollar and what we call the RTGS. Now, when a country cannot produce, it cannot support its own currency. So really, we do not have today a government, a governing party that has got the strategy to be able to manage our problems. So we outsource every function in Zimbabwe. So we outsource even the construction of our parliament, the construction of the airport. We import every good. So your trade deficit, current account deficit, remains there because there's no one really who is actually closing the gap. So I think there's no basically solutions within the current government.
Jacob?
Well, we have been down this road before. We are coming and we are going where we've been before. And we have rescued the country before when President Advocate Nelson Chamisa and his colleagues were in the government. We rescued this country from economic malaise, a collapsed currency, and utter chaos in everyone's life. The pensions had gone, and we restored dignity to the people. We created an economy for everyone, and that is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to create an economy for everyone, and it's going to be very, very simple. We have to go back to the basic fundamentals of economics. Stop corruption, stop runaway expenditure, stop illogical decisions around economic malaise, stop looting or rampant looting of natural resources, engage in good or contracts that benefit the country, make sure that people get a living wage, that we have a solid currency for people to trade in. We've done this before in 2008, and we're going to do this again August 24.
Thank you, Jacob. I have to jump in there. Wilbert, you heard the question. Economic commentators basically are saying that we have a currency crisis and market failure. How would you tackle this? You're a presidential candidate. What would be your policy to tackle the economy?
When the failure has gone on for so long, it doesn't become a crisis. It becomes a state of affairs. For me, it is, you see, the currency and the inflation are indicators. They are just telling you what has gone wrong. And what has gone wrong in this country is just one thing. We have failed to produce. We never started to produce since 1980. We have continued on the same trajectory. We have used the same pot to prepare our food, our industries, as was left by Smith. There is no industrial growth in this country, no new areas of... So until we start producing, until the whole country starts producing, until Harare stops exporting to smaller towns and smaller towns export to Harare, we will never solve this problem. So it's a production issue. We simply need to produce what we eat. We need to import less. There is no miracle about it. Okay. We are not producing.
All right.
We have not produced.
All right. My next question is geared or directed to Jacob and Tafazo. I'll start with you, Jacob. Still talking about currencies and also looking at market reforms. I'd like to know your party's views. Should Zimbabwe dollarize or not, since the argument goes from economic commentators and economists that over 70% of transactions are United States dollars. So effectively, they are submitting that we are already dollarized. Your views?
Well, we're already dollarized. The market is speaking for itself. Rentals are in dollars. People are trading in dollars, and the RTGS has become the currency for speculators, the currency for taking away value from the people, a currency for making sure that people do not earn a living wage. Translate the RTGS that an ordinary soldier is getting, that an ordinary nurse is getting, that a teacher is getting. The RTGS is not a currency for everyone. It's a currency for those that want to speculate, those that want to take people's money, those that are taking value from the people. And we do believe that were we to get our own currency, we need to go back to the economic fundamentals, be able to govern the country without runaway expenditure, without a lot of wastage in our currency system. What we have here is a situation where the market itself is rejecting the RTGS and effectively dollarizing.
Thank you. Tafazo, you heard the question. To dollarize or not? Are we dollarized or aren't we? What is your party's position in terms of the Zimbabwe dollar and the use of foreign currencies?
I think our position has been very clear that for us to be a full sovereign republic, we must have our own currency. So honestly, I'm actually shocked to hear that the other people are coming here fronting the greenback. We don't believe in that. While we do have it, because of course of the nostalgic idea of 2009, when we effectively dollarized, as a party, we have taken a position that ultimately and going forward, the final solution to the Zimbabwean crisis is the Zimbabwean dollar. But of course, for the reasons that I don't want to overemphasize here because they are given to everyone, you know the challenges that our currency face. We have had these currencies before. I'm sure Jacob has used it before, and he continues to use it right now. We cannot take, therefore, this stage as an occasion to berate or undermine our currency. We respect the Zim dollar, and we expect it to gain much more value as it is right now, given the measures that have been put in place. People are talking about protection, but you know that if you were to give me some more time, we'll talk effectively about how we.
As I said, we will obviously have to have a long debate and a different show when we look at the economy as we break down the various issues that do impact on Zimbabwe and hear from each political party on their solutions to some of those issues. Wilbert, I'll come to you now. The IMF visited the country recently and recommended there is a need for liberalization of the foreign exchange market, ensuring the central bank does not print money through quasi-fiscal operations, among other issues that they raised. What is your take on the recommendations by the IMF as it pertains specifically to liberalization of the foreign exchange market?
They are typical recommendations of the IMF. You don't expect anything different. But you see, because we have effectively dollarized, because most of the services, even of government, are being paid for in foreign currency. We paid USD 20,000. Yes, they are correct, but they are wrong. In the sense that when you are going to, you don't do it in a vacuum. There are other scenarios that you must look at. We have got a people that survive on other things other than what the IMF looks when they come here. We have got a population in Gurube, in Gutu, that have nothing to do with what the IMF are talking about. But we need to look at it and see to what extent we can go with their recommendations. But for me, until we really get to have our own economy, until we get to have our own philosophies on how an economy should grow, we may not take directly what the IMF is saying. But they are right, because that's what a normal economy goes around. But are we a normal economy?
Let me ask you, Joseph, the same question about the IMF recommendations, their strong recommendation to liberalize the foreign exchange market. Your views?
We must have homegrown solutions. I think we've had ISAB, we've had all these international institutions imposing whatever they call structural adjustments or proposals that have never worked for us. So basically, we want homegrown solutions. I believe that for us to have stability in the country, we need to make sure that there's trust that is earned, and trust is earned. You can't buy it, you can't do anything. So we believe that as a party, as Free Zim Congress, we need to restore trust. We need to make sure that we increase production to be able to support the currency. We need to have our own currency because that defines sovereignty. I believe that when we come into government, we have the solutions and the strategies to be able to make sure that that stability and that trust, the governing model that is transparent, that can instill and inspire and give confidence to both people here and overseas investors is restored.
So Fazwa, the government's NDS-1 economic plan runs up, as you know, to 2025. Does the NDS-1, in your party's view, take into account the current inflationary pressures in the economy and currency instability that we are or have recently witnessed? Most targets critics contend may not be met in the NDS-1 because of what could be called unforeseen economic factors. What is your comment?
Well, I think then, that question addresses what my colleagues have been talking about just a few minutes ago. We're a producing nation more than we were in the old republic. I'm sure everyone is aware. I don't know what they really mean when they say everything is imported and everything is happening from outside of the country coming inside. I'm sure the tragedy is that people spend much of their time outside of the country such that they may not be able to discover activity realities on the ground. We are producing, and that is where the solution is. Like I said, we have focused. The NDS-1 actually talks about agriculture, and I think everyone here appreciates that our agricultural system is now scientific. NDS-1 talks about mining and creation of a 12 billion mining economy, and I think where we are surpassing it. We are producing gold, we are producing all sorts of minerals. Now we are, of course, much more powered with the discoveries of lithium. That is where the solution is. And I agree with with my brother Busha when he talks about homegrown solution. That is where the focus of the NDS one is, and that is why the president continues to say production, production, production to limit imports.
I have to jump in
and
there,
of course,
Tafatwa.
boost the
Jacob,
exports, yes.
NDS1, what is Triple C's view on NDS1? I mean, the argument states that because of the current alleged turmoil in the markets, or that we've had witnessed recently with the targets not being met, NDS1 possibly didn't take into account some of these erroneous factors. Your view?
Yes, it's been a complete and utter failure. You know, when you have to convince a child that a sweet is sweet, then clearly the sweet has failed to achieve what it ought to achieve in one's mouth. When you have, you know, we used to have an advert, nyama inonaka inotaura chi, inotaura yega, anditika Samson. Now, nyama inoshata equally inotaura yega. We have had NDS1 for so many years now. Our salaries are worse than what they were. Our rentals have gone up. The currency has gone on a tailspin. People can no longer afford what they used to afford. Transporting yourself from point A to point B is a pain. Just living has become so painful and untenable. Jobs are nowhere to be seen. People are flooding the airlines, going to be care workers in the UK. Everybody is suffering. There is no indicator that has gone up. Every indicator is showing down.
I have to jump in there. I want to now turn to the issue of state-owned enterprises, which most critics and commentators and economists say are still a tremendous drain on Zimbabwe's fiscus. There have been loud calls for privatization of government-owned enterprises, most of which are not performing to expected capacity, something which even Zimbabwe's current finance minister, Professor Ntuli Ngube, has repeatedly acknowledged and to some degree supported. So the question is, what do you think needs to be done to revitalize these parastatals? And further, do you believe that most state-owned enterprises should be privatized or indeed even sold off or not? I'll start with you, Joseph.
I don't believe in privatization of key organs of service delivery. So there's no way you're going to privatize electricity, because then it becomes unaffordable to lots of people. There's no way you're going to privatize the entire transport system. Government must have a role. Now, if you look in terms of the Chinese model, the companies that are coming to help in Africa, they are owned by the state, but they're owned by the Chinese government. So I think the issue really is about governance. We need to be able to put the best men and women to run those state-owned entities and make sure that there's separation of powers between the executive and those people. So they need to just make sure that executives continue to do what they need to do, which is administer and give policy direction. And those companies must be run by professional people who subscribe to certain code of conduct and standards.
Thank you. Wilbert, your views on state-owned enterprises?
It's very difficult to really say you can sell or keep some of them. I think the starting point is you have to commercialize some of them because of the way they are run. They are no longer commercial. They're just typical government departments. So they need to be taught how to do business, first and foremost. A lot of them need to be kept, but some might need to be sold. NRZ, for example, you can't sell it, but there's a lot that needs to be done to bring it up to scratch. When you look at Zupco, when you look at every other state-owned enterprise, when you look at ZESA, for example, nothing is really working. So yes, you must keep your state-owned enterprises, but you need to make them commercially viable. You need to make them sound. You need to do the right things. You cannot completely do away with state-owned enterprise. They are the starting of your business as a nation, but we need to make them better. And how do we do it? We need to change the way we govern things. It's a governance system, as my brother said. It's very important that we keep them, but we make them viable. NRZ is down on its knees. Air Zimbabwe is down on its knees. Almost everything is down on its knees. We are starting afresh. We have to start afresh. Okay. The whole country must be started afresh.
All right. Tafatwa, you heard the other views of my other candidates. What does ZANU-PF believe or their position on state-owned enterprise?
Well, I think today I just...
There are certain questions that you're asking just two people and then others that you're asking everyone.
Don't worry, you can have a chance. You will have a chance to answer all of them or even put them.
Fair advantage over people.
No,
I really now appreciate that indeed we're in an election season and all sorts of things can be said, completely different, of course, from what is existing on the ground. I don't know what my colleagues, particularly the presidential aspirant next to me, who was very brave enough to part away with 20,000 affiliation fees to ZEC, I'm sure this colleague, but I don't know what they mean when they say, other state parastatals like Zupuko, they are down on their knees. I don't know whether these gentlemen are coming from the locations where we are coming from or they are coming from somewhere. I'm sure, Makamba, you agree with me, the last time you had to see a Zupuko driving on the roads, I don't know how old you were, but now you have a revamped public transport system under President Mnangagwa, which is thriving, and Zupuko is in every community. There is no community that is no Zupuko. So when you are saying they are down on their knees, exactly, I don't understand what you are talking. But like you said, it's like I said, it's an election season. Now, with regards to parastatals, I agree with my colleagues. Yes, I'm sure the minister has been very clear. There are other parastatals that needs to be privatized and commercialized in order to ensure that they work vibrantly. Then there are those that provide critical services to the people. Those ones must continue to work on a subsidized service provision to ensure that our people are cushioned in the process.
Thank you. Jacob, Triple C's position?
We need to rethink the concept of parastatals and what their role is. We've got Sinara. We give them, just as Harare alone, $64 million per year, and they give back $2 million. The other amount goes missing. We've got ZESA. Before ZESA was created, Harare and Bulawayo used to make their own electricity. Bulawayo had the cheapest electricity at 27 cents. Harare had the next cheaper electricity at 34 cents. Create ZESA. It took our power station. The very next day, they charged us for electricity. Now we no longer have electricity. They've got a power station with 110 megawatts capacity, producing 11 megawatts for the residents of Harare. There is no electricity. You talk about Zinwa. Zinwa is building dams in game parks where they can only do crocodiles. The other minister went there and said, look, we are going to export water to South Africa. But in a population of Harare, the last dam was built in 1976. This parastatal model is not working, has not worked, and it's a looting
All right, I have to jump in there.
enterprise.
Now, my next question is to all of you, and I must state that I will be as fair as I can, so I do apologize if you feel that I'm not, but I will be and give you an opportunity to talk, but it will be about foreign policy. I want to talk first, it's the same question, but it's different, because obviously with ZANU-PF in the ruling party. Tafazo, let me start with you. It's reported that the country's manufacturing and other sectors are scaling greater heights, buoyed by the Zimbabwe's open for business policy and the Zimbabwe as an enemy to none and a friend to all mantra, with some significant investments being seen, especially in the mining sector. That is according to Azida. As ZANU-PF seeks another presidential term, will we likely see the same foreign policy of re-engagement and the creation of what some would call an even more investor-friendly environment, or not?
In fact, we are going to be much more vigorous on the foreign policy, in pursuing the current foreign policy strategy, which is simply engagement and re-engagement. Re-engagement meaning finding friends with those countries that were friends before, but along the way we lost each other for various reasons. But of course, chief among them being the giant land reform program that ZANU-PF implemented in early 2000. You know, the countries that fell out of favor. Well, with us around that, of course, at the behest and the instigation of then opposition, but I don't want to speak because it's not represented here, except that it has its offsprings with people like Jacob. Yeah. So, but we are going to be vigorous in re-engaging them to ensure that they fulfill their previous obligations, their current obligations, and we continue to lure much more businesses from their countries. I'm sure you have seen a lot of companies, manufacturing companies coming from them, export trade opening up, although they still keep some degree of sanctions on us. In terms of engagement, we continue to create much more friendly countries than those that we used to have. For example, Belarus, we didn't have a past with it, but look where we are. So okay. Vigorous in pursuing.
I have to jump in there. Now to my other guests, all three of you will get to answer this question. I will start with you, Jacob. What would be your party's or your candidates for president's foreign policy's top objectives and priorities if you happen to land the top job, and more significantly, your foreign investment attraction policies?
It is written in the stars. Come 23 August, President Advocate Nelson Chamisa will be the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. So that is not even something we question. Our foreign policy is very simple. We have not made any enemies. We are friends to everyone. We are going to have the best interests of Zimbabwe at the heart of our foreign policy. We are not going to be extractive. We are not going to allow people to take our natural resources willy-nilly without conditions. We are going to be having a mutually beneficial relationship with all countries. We will be a Pan-Africanist looking country. We will be able to put the center at the center of our foreign policy, the needs of Zimbabwe, and a Pan-African worldview. We believe that we should engage on a principled platform and on a mutually beneficial platform. And we are friends to everyone.
I'll jump in there. Wilbert, let me ask you the same question. If you became the president, you got the top job, what would be your foreign policy, top objectives and priorities? And of course, what would you do to create an even more or an investor-friendly environment?
The fundamental statement is that we seek equal sovereignty with anyone, and everyone around the world. We seek friendship with everyone, but friendship starts where your predecessor lives. So you can't start on a clean spread when there is someone else who has been in power. We have to correct whatever would have been done wrong. There are people who are complaining. The IMF is saying what it is saying, America is saying. We need to find out why they are complaining. So, but we will be friendly to everyone. But we will focus more on what business does to us. We will not worry about the $12 billion mining project and we don't know whose industry it is, because the money is not here. It's the foreigners who are taking our gold out. So that has to be looked at, and people must understand. We cannot talk of about $12 billion when a foreign partner is taking all the chrome outside. Every day you see it go out. So we have to start in saying, let it be fair. Let's be fair to each other. Equal sovereignty. But we encourage foreign direct investment. We encourage everyone to come here and invest, but on equal sovereignty basis.
Joseph, you heard the question, your foreign policy, top objectives and priorities, and of course the creation of an investor-friendly environment if you got the top job in Zimbabwe.
Non-aligned, mutual respect in pursuit of peace across the globe. We believe in a non-violent, gun-free society. So we want mutual respect and we'll be non-aligned. So for me, I think that's a priority. Then the second issue is in terms of attracting investors. Certainly, I think we believe that if there's any investors that are coming through, the first investor must be Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans must have confidence in their own country, in their own economy, and that has to be on equal footing. There's no way we're going to build our country when we only attract foreign investors, give them better terms than our own local terms, citizens, and they ship the goods outside the country. So for us, I think really is mutual benefit, mutual respect, and non-aligned based on principles of fighting for peace.
I'd like to now turn to the issue of land and agrarian reforms. I believe that no one would argue that Zimbabwe needs to be food self-sufficient, and in fact the country does have the potential to be probably one of the top food exporters in Africa. What would be your land and agricultural policy should you or your candidates, in this case for two of my guests, become president? Let me start with you, Jacob.
Well, our agrarian position is very simple. The land is a critical part of the economy. The land reform exercise was done. It just needs to be corrected, to have audits, and it is irreversible, and we have to proceed from that premise. But what we need to do is to make sure that people get title, to make sure that people get value from their produce. Currently, people who farmed tobacco, who farmed maize, are not getting the money at the values that they ought to get. Part of the money is coming in RTGS, part of the money is coming in US dollars. And we do believe that our farmers are getting a raw deal under the current payment model. Firstly, they have to have security. Secondly, they need to be adequately paid for what they farmed. And thirdly, they need to get cheap financing for their inputs and be able to continue with farming. And we are going to make sure that we correct these anomalies.
Robert, land reform and agrarian reform, of course, it has been topical, and you heard there from Jacob Mafume. What would be your land and agricultural policy should you become president?
Land is very critical in our lives, and land reform is a continuous process. No president in this world will live his term without reforming land. So to us, it's a continuous process. And what was done, I loved it. It's the only time I didn't, that's the reason why I didn't vote for Tsvangirai at that time. It's because of land reform. We need to make sure that our farming is improved. What our farmers get is improved. But I'm more worried about those who retire at the age of 65 from farming and get nothing. We need to see how we reward our people who've been farming for a whole life and become 65 and they become destitute. So we need to have a system where people who have left farming and are old can still continue to earn something because they've caused the development of the economy. But land reform and farming, there is no quarrel on that one. This is what sustains the country.
Thank you. Joseph?
Land is a non-depleting asset, the most valuable asset for the country. From lands, we produce food. From lands, we are able to get our resources. We believe that the only reason we went to war was to make sure that Zimbabweans restore what belongs to them, which is the land. So I believe that we cannot continue changing the land policy. There need to be certainty there. We need to increase production. There has been increase in production. So Zimbabwe has had the most successful land reform program in Africa. By 1985, the report showed that there were more people resettled in Zimbabwe after independence than any other countries done. So we believe we just need to refine that, and we need to make sure that there's stability and there's more production.
Tafazwa, land reform was initiated by the ruling ZANU-PF, yet at the recent Debt and Arrears Clearance Forum, the issue of land tenure and reform appears to be on the table, and an issue that apparently Zimbabwe's creditors are interested in. Will ZANU-PF's land and agrarian reform policies remain in place, or do you believe there is potential and opportunity to tweak them or not?
Well, let me just say, Hodges, I appreciate my colleagues, I think from my left side, appreciating that the land reform was a giant step taken so bravely by the people of Zimbabwe under the leadership of our ruling party, ZANU-PF. Except my colleague from the right side who says they want to correct it. I don't know what exactly he thinks he has got the capacity to correct. Remember, if the land reform was an exercise, this was an exercise that Jacob Mafume and his party, then the MDC, inherited by Triple C and MDCT now, were against that exercise from taking place. So what do they seek to correct? I think their hands are dead on that. But in terms of progress now, I think what we now have, we are happy as ZANU-PF that under President Emerson Mnangagwa in the Second Republic, we have been able to achieve food security on the basis of 4 programs. The Presidential Input Support Scheme, which is supporting over 3 million to 4 million households across the country. The Fumfudza Inquasa Scientific Agricultural Production Program, which has made sure that we are now food secure as a nation. The winter wheat farming program, which has produced the winter that can save this nation for over 14 months, assuming there was no production. So we are on course. We have done so well. Just to give us the kudos, give us the the tick.
I have to jump in there. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This is ZTN Prime. Our discussion, election 2023. Who will land top job? It's time for us to take a breather. Don't go away. The Chase. We'll be right back.
Give every morning the smart start it deserves with your favorite homegrown breakfast cereal. Nestle Ceravita. Fortified with Grain Smart, a smart combination of ions, vitamins and minerals. Your family gets all the energy they need to make the most of every day. That's why every morning deserves a smart start. Nestle Ceravita, highly nutritious, simply delicious.
Yawuya isifikile. Introducing the $dollar funeral plan. If you are a vendor, burial society, church, cooperative, organized group, this is the plan for you. For just $1 only, you can be covered. SMS live to 712 and we will call you back. Uyai Mose or Zani Lonke for just $1 per month. First Mutual Life. With you, for you.
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This is ZTM Prime, broadcasting to you from our studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Good evening. I'm Andy Hodges. Now then, I'd like to continue talking about the land issue and land and agrarian reform. And I'll start with you, Tafadzwa, and I'll ask you all your views on this. A constitutional requirement is that of compensation to former commercial farmers. As the ruling party, what are your views on the $3.5 billion United States dollar compensation plan, especially in light of the fact, as critics contend, that it will put, or it may just put Zimbabwe more into debt? Tafadzwa?
Well, that money is not coming from the government of Zimbabwe. I'm sure the president clarified that when that agreement was signed. At least only those who are ignorant are very quick to make or pass out comments over things that they really have not digested. That money is going to come from the countries where the former white farmers came from. That is what the agreement is all about. So it's not about the taxpayers' money or the Zimbabwean government going about looking for that money to pay it. It is going to come from those people who had an obligation to pay for the land reform program, which was imminent and supposed to happen. So there's nothing new here, unless people want to fantasize. Actually, what we have done under the Second Republic, much more on the land, is downsizing. I don't know what editing is talking about, but we have done downsizing or to ensure that every person gets a single farm, and if the farm is too big for them, from what we see they are capable of producing, we reduce it to the size where they can to the size they can utilize, and then we give out to others. And this is where we are, and there's nothing that is going to stop us from doing that further.
Jacob, your views on the $3.5 billion?
The good thing about their party, when they are doing divorces, we then realize how many farms each family has. So I don't have to go very far. All I have to do is to walk across the High Court there, go into the divorce files. You realize someone are fighting over 5 farms, others are fighting over 17 farms. That's what we are talking about. So very soon, I'm sure if he is to enter into a divorce himself, we will understand how many farms he has in due course. So we are very clear that we need to be able to say, reduce the farms to one size. We don't have to wait for divorce proceedings for us to know how many farms each person has. We have to just do an audit. We give people title deeds, and we make sure that people have right-sized farms for the particular activity that they are doing, and those that are land speculating do not continue to do so. That is what we mean by saying we need to adjust, audit, or correct, as it were. You mustn't grow goosebumps over simple English language.
I have to jump in there. Joseph, your views, $3.5 billion United States dollars compensation plan for former farmers.
I believe that the taxpayers cannot find any payment to anyone. There were 2 parts here. There was the farm owner and the farm worker. If the farm owner is being repaid, the farm workers that were displaced, whose lives were kind of disturbed, must also get compensation. So as a party and as a president, when I become president of Zimbabwe, I'll just make sure that we restore the dignity of those people, and Zimbabwe as a country will not pay any farmer the money. The person who is enjoying the house, because the land is not an issue, the land must basically not be paid for. But the improvements, which is the house of the previous farm owner, whoever is staying in that house, that's what they must pay for, but not the country.
Robert, your views?
I don't know the contents of $3.5 billion commitment, but from what I know, we shouldn't really pay for the land that belongs to us. But as my colleague says, if someone occupied the house, because Mugabe said we need to pay for improvements on the farm, and I agree with him. Whoever is utilizing that equipment, the houses and so forth, must pay for that. No taxpayer must pay for someone's pleasure on a farm. But as I said, land reform is a continuous process, and we are not going to stop. When we get into power, it has to continue. Gross production must increase, the farming must increase. So people, and our population is increasing. So we will continue with land reform. But whoever enjoys a benefit must pay for it. No one must get a free ride. There should be no free lunch for anyone.
Thank you. Gentlemen, commentators have argued that most political parties are only good at sloganeering and promises without any real tangible results or accountable deliverables. This is the time, I would assume, that you can validate yourselves, your parties, and your own positions. What would be your response to such comments? I'll go this way. Joseph, let me start with you.
So if you have been employed and you're looking for a new job, you talk about your experience and what you have achieved. Those who have been in government should be able to show what they have achieved. So when we talk about in terms of failure, that's the reason why there's high unemployment. It's only employment that can measure that there is production in the country and the economy is growing. So my belief is that I am the most qualified person right now out of the 11 candidates to be able to run the country. The key issue is financial, right? None of them have got expertise, proven track record in terms of financial management, investments, capital allocation, and the management thereof. It is a skill that we need to do. So when you say, what is the price of platinum we're selling when we do that? We need to say it's a basket and what is the value of that?
All right, I have to jump in there. Robert, you heard the question. Parties are only good for sloganeering and promises without any tangible results or accountable deliverables. Your comment?
I don't want to talk about what other people know or don't
Talk
know.
about your part.
But I'm an engineer, I'm a banker, I'm a financial analyst, I'm an infrastructure specialist. So I am equally qualified. So we know a lot of things. But what I can tell you is that in order to make sure this country goes forward, we need to make sure that every part of the country grows. Every growth point must grow. Every area must grow. We must produce something everywhere so that we change the structure of this country. Guruwe must produce something, not Harare only. That's the starting point. Yes, we can talk about structuring and all those things. That's my specialty as an engineer and as a finance expert. But I know without producing in every corner of the country, we're just making sure that Gutu produces, Wange produces, we can't go anywhere. Binga eats bread made in Harare, and that's madness. How can we transport bread 1,070 kilometers to Manjolo? And expect progress.
Tafazwa, sloganeering, promises, tangible results, and also accountable deliverables.
Actually, I was going to cut you. They were not commentators who said that. It was President Mnangagwa who said that on his first ever inauguration in 2017. It's no longer time for sloganeering. Politics must take a backseat while the economy and production take the front seat. That's why I will be shocked, really, if these guys continue to say we are talking about the story of 5 years of failure. If failure is completing the road from Harare to Beit Bridge, in 4 years or 5 years, when the previous government could not do that in 37 years, then I'll agree that we failed. If failure is revamping the Harare International Airport or Robert Mugabe International Airport to the state of the art that it is right now, then if that is what they call failure, let me say we failed. If failure is making sure that we are food secure as a nation and that we are speaking in long sentences and very beautiful voices, because all of us out of Pumbuza and presidential input support scheme, and then you say we failed. If that is failure, I agree that we have failed. Then let me also tell you that in terms of the reform structure of government, we have made sure that we make business quite easier. We are talking about local investment as a priority. As the government of Zimbabwe under President Mnangagwa, we have opened up the space for business, both local and foreign, to ensure that the country starts ticking again. If that is failure, then I would agree that we have failed, according to them. Not only that, we have made sure that we create a 12 billion mining economy. Now we are moving towards 7 billion. The reason why we are doing it, Hodges, we are trying to leverage the growth of this economy on the backbone of its God-given resources. Remember, the president says, we got this country without asking for it. We must develop on the basis of what it can offer. That's what we are doing. If that is failure, then we have failed. I don't know what success is for you.
I have to jump in there. Jacob, you heard this: tangible results and accountable deliverables, not just sloganeering.
Yes, we don't sloganeer. We are competent. We've been down this road before. When our president and his colleagues were ministers, we managed to put money in everybody's pocket. Wages were 500 US and above. Cell phones reduced to $1. Airtime was ubiquitous. People were eating. People were getting married. There were wedding parties the whole country over. And people had hope. And once we bring back President Advocate Nelson Chamisa, we are going to see that hope again. We are going to restore the currency. We are going to restore wages to the people. We are going to restore pensions. We are going to restore dignity. It's undignified that people have to earn the equivalent of 10 US, 12 US, a teacher, a soldier, a policeman, a prisoner, officers. That is why their voting patterns now are towards change, and people are now complaining about it.
All right. I need to jump in here. This next question is directed to the two presidential candidates here in the studio, Joseph and Wilbert. In Zimbabwe's political arena, it has been for many years allegedly a two-man or a two-party race. Parties such as yours are regarded by commentators as minnows, rightly or wrongly, of course, with little or no chance of landing the top job. What are you offering that is different from the main parties to encourage citizens to vote for you? Joseph, I'll start with you.
We appreciate what our forefathers, the liberation movements have done. I acknowledge that, but what I'm saying to you is that they have not completed what we fought for. There are three sides to the equilateral triangle of independence. That's the social, political, economic, and territorial. Now, if you do not have social, political independence, your territory is compromised. What I'm here for is to complete what we fought for as a country, because I believe we have taken too long to be able to do that. So I'm saying, thank you so much for what you have done. Now we are going with Basata. We are the experts that are going to complete that so that they can be happy. I want President Mnangagwa to enjoy his retirement or president, because we're saying we are happy you've done your part. Thank you.
Robert, what would you different? You heard the comments there. It's a two-party race, two-man race. So really, what would you offer to the electorate as your party's presidential candidate that is different, or that would entice them or encourage citizens to vote for you?
Because of technology, we have improved efficiency in our industry, but we have not increased the capacity. In fact, the capacity has gone down. Anyone who goes back to the 1999 statistics will tell you that our capacity has gone down. So we need to bring back the capacity to what it was pre-1999. We need to introduce industries everywhere, because without that, we can never call ourselves a country. If we are all eating what is produced in Harare, made in Guruwe, produced in Harare, and eaten in Guruwe, that will not work. As I said before, we are talking about a 12 billion, but it's a Chinese mining economy. We don't want a $12 billion minerals economy, which is a Chinese one. We want our own. We want to make sure that the things that are here are controlled here, and the people here work on what they can produce. We are competent, we are capable. So the bottom line for me is, let's introduce development everywhere. Our philosophy is development without boundaries, and we need to do that across the country.
Thank you. Now, as I said, ZTN Prime will be continuing every Thursday on The Chase at 9 p.m. Of course, we will be continuing our election series, and there will be many more of these debates where we do break it down and look at specific topics that each party will bring for specific issues that we do, whether it's the economy, whether it be social issues, whether it be women and gender issues, youth, people with disabilities. So please stay tuned and watch ZTN Prime's The Chase on Thursday, 9 p.m. Now, I have to ask you a final question, and again, I'll give you 1 minute each, and I will be tight on this because we are running out of time. Every Zimbabwean wants an election process free of violence and intimidation. They want to be able to go and vote for the party, the candidate of their choice, without intimidation and violence. Can you all state on the record tonight your party's views on violence before, during, and after the August 23rd harmonized election? Joseph, I'll start with you.
I'm the messenger of peace. I denounce violence in any form, whether it's gender, political, whatever the case is. Let's vote and conduct ourselves in peace. And I think the current ruling party, the government, have also been preaching that. But I think they need to make sure that that message goes to their supporters on the ground so that Zimbabwe can be great again.
Thank you, Robert. Your final
Our philosophy is Ubuntu.
Please go ahead.
It's for development without boundaries. It's for respect. Ubuntu stands for respect. We have said in our manifesto, we don't want anyone shouting at another leader. I don't want to shout at Mnangagwa. I don't want to shout at Chamisa. They are leaders in our own right. Because violence starts at the mouth. Our people respond to what we say. So we stand for peace. We stand for Ubuntu. We stand for everything that is good about our nation. No shouting at the other leaders. We respect them equally. And if we do that, there will be no violence.
Tafazo, of course, your leader, the ruling party, your leader has stated many times about non-violence. Maybe you could articulate and reiterate that message, which of course has been widely reported in the media.
In fact, I think as a statesman, not only a SADC statesman, but an African statesman, as you have seen just recently, our presidential candidate, Comrade Mnangagwa, was in Mozambique, mediating between Ronamo and Frelimo to ensure that guns are put down to create a space for peace. We exist for peace. We fought for a peaceful society. We must therefore protect it, and we are duty-bound to. That is why the president's message, Comrade Mnangagwa, is very clear and categorical on violence. Very much so, we want peaceful elections. We want to exercise tolerance. No one must lose blood. No blood must be gushing out because we are going for elections. We want to have them in an environment of peace. But we know, of course, that there are people who misconstrue this message. Remember, President Mnangagwa wears two jackets, which is, I think it's an important point. He's the president of ZANU-PF, but also president of the Republic and the head of state and government. When he makes that message for peaceful elections, that message must bind both the ZANU-PF supporters and non-ZANU-PF supporters as understanding as the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe.
I have to jump in there, but no violence. Jacob, what is Triple C's final message when it comes to violence? What is your party's position?
Our president, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, is a peaceful president. He has no one's blood on his hands. He has been an advocate for peace. He is a president for everyone. Our message for peace is for all Zimbabweans. We want a country that is peaceful for everyone. And we have maintained, and we've been victims. Currently, we are in Chiredzi, we are in Bikita. Police and colleagues from his party have been following our party supporters with tear gas, with all sorts of weaponry. That has to stop. We are for peace, and we will maintain the peace.
Unfortunately, I have to cut it off there. As I said, ZTN Prime's election programming will continue in the weeks to come, but unfortunately, we've come to the end of the chase this evening. I'd like to thank my guests, Joseph Makamba Busha, Freezim Congress President, Tafazo Mugwadi, ZANU-PF, Jacob Mafuma, Triple C, and Engineer Wilbert Mubaiwa, NPC President. This program is brought to you by ZTN Prime in partnership with the Election Resource Center, ERC. I'm Andy Hodges. Have a good night, goodbye, and please, you all be safe.